Hello, my name is Kyle Roderick Ridley, and I am focused on the fundamentals. What's fun, dumb, and mental. Bzz. It's Rose-Colored Classes, episode 67. Episode 67. Episode 67, you're kidding. It can't be. This is literally episode 67? What's going on? I hit it. I hit the number. I hit the bit while it's still hot. This podcast has finally hit the moment. Episode 67. You know the numbers. It's in the news. Everyone's laughing about it. South Park's ribbing on it. And this episode, it's actually 67. It's 67. I can't believe it. No, this obviously means something. This obviously means something big, important. No, I've been studying a lot of numerology lately. A lot of it can't be a coincidence, all right? My birth date is the perfect description of who I am, and I'm on episode 67. It's real. It all means something. Yeah, I'm all about the numbers, baby. Yeah, last episode. It was the biggest episode ever. My biggest episode yet. I got like 700 views. I'm kidding. No, like 600 views. It was the biggest episode ever. Big fucking episode. Big one. Yeah, I love it when these podcasters they have their next show and they go this may have been our biggest episode yet, and it's like millions upon millions of views. And here I am, about 600. So, and you know what? You ask those guys about that, feeling that they have when millions of people, view their content, and they'll tell you it's exactly the same feeling I have right now. Okay, so be happy. Be happy for me. I got a hit of dopamine. All right, I will be inspired and motivated to continue this podcast for like 6-7 more weeks. Okay, no, I want to thank all the bots. I want to thank all the bots and the people who won't stop scrolling. Yeah, I want to thank the people whose mind is in a bend from these tech corporations. Yeah, if you are hopelessly addicted to the internet and can't escape, thank you. Thank you. Now, I'm very happy. I obviously got all the viewers because my last show is all about Candace Owens. I got a bump. I got a nice sized bump. I got what I'm calling the Candace Owens baby bump. Yeah, if you are on the internet posting content and you get a modicum of new viewers because you're mentioning the queen bitch of the podcasting universe, Candace motherfucking Owens, you just got the Candace Owens baby bump. Yeah, and hey, queen bitch is a term with a lot of respect, all right? That's what she is. She's queen bitch, okay? It's nice. Look it up. She would probably hate it. It's actually kind of offensive. Something David Bowie. Right on. Gosh. Speaking of cross-dressing sex freaks, like David Bowie, I did have a nicely planned episode on Thursday, and I will do it tonight. I will do it. But I was really hemming and hawing yesterday about what the content of this should be, because obviously the Jeffy Epi estate came out with some docs, and right, yeah, we don't know until we know, or whatever Candace says. But so far, I mean, it seems like this is gonna be occupying some news cycles. Seems like it's gonna be a topic that's gonna be a little overpowering again for a little while. Tons of docs, 20,000 fucking docs. They're all images. They're all images. They refuse to release it as a PDF file. I wonder why. Yeah, maybe the transferring the images to the PDF file. Yeah, that's a bit of a irony. No, really, guys, I'm reading that Donald Trump sucked Bill Clinton's cock. All right? Yeah, it turns out Donnie T has a ballroom and it's his mouth. No, I'm reading. I'm out here reading that Jeffrey Epstein had a Thanksgiving dinner with Donald Trump while he was president. Okay? And if you're asking, yes, there was a kids' table. Yep, they basted the turkey with God, with what? God knows. Oh, God. Oh, I'm so fucked up. Yeah, I heard the marshmallows were made with cum. Okay. No, it's really fucked up. And I'm not here just to pick on Donnie T, all right? I mean, turns out via these documents that Donald Trump may be the one who called the police on Jeffrey Epstein in the first place. Why did he call them? Because Epstein fucked him over on a real estate deal. And that's a believable story. I mean, there's tons to say, okay, and it's not all about fucking Mr. President, okay? I would like to let it play out a little bit longer. See what shakes out to be true. It's all true. And I mean, what? I got 3 jokes hot off the top. I mean, what do I really need to do at this moment? Just let the facts go out. Let people read the PDF files. Yeah, it was a tough decision not to make the whole episode about it, but I got a thing going. I'm a little self-involved, okay? And it may be a mistake. It was a tough decision, and you'll see when the show turns out. Okay, but yeah, I mean, last episode, biggest episode ever, via the Candace baby bump. I'm so excited. Yeah, and I do feel like here for the new viewers, maybe even the old viewers, the oldest viewer. Respect to my elders. I do feel like a pull really to, lay out what this podcast is about, what I'm about, my personal identity, personal philosophy. Talk about my mission, my various positions on topics. I mean, out here listening, who the fuck am I, right? Why should you listen to Rose-Colored Classist? Why? Because of a silly joke about the kids' table at Jeffrey Epstein's Thanksgiving? Is that why? That seems like a good enough reason. But I don't know. I mean, just here today in the world, like, it just seems that, your personal identity matters, right? What your supposed ideological position matters, actually. And, I do feel a responsibility to tell people about my life, what's going on with me. So maybe, when you listen, you can, understand me contextually. Right, so first off, Rose-Colored Classist as a name of a podcast, I mean, it's a perfect name. Perfect name. Encapsulates everything I'm about. Literally what I look like. It's a great pun. And this is a comedy podcast. I mean, honestly. Sincerely, seriously, like, I do care and have something to say about, like, important social and economic issues of the complicated time we're living in. Okay, I do believe that, sharing an opinion on the internet perhaps is your duty as a citizen. Okay, I do believe that, if anything, we need to have our personalities and true feelings put out there so they can be incorporated into the supreme AI intelligence that's going to control all our lives. But as of right now, I've, have a story as a comic. I have a story as a real person. I have feelings. Okay, I have feelings, ideas. Maybe they mean something, maybe they don't, but, I'm a real person. Okay, the AI couldn't emulate me if they tried. All right, the glasses, the hair, the voice, particular diction. Good fucking luck trying to emulate me. So yeah, my life. I'm gonna tell you about it. Maybe you'll hear about me and my story, and you'll understand me a little bit better. Really, you want to? You want to understand me? You want to? Fast forward. Okay. No, I grew up in California. California guy. All the celebrities, all the people. Supposedly, I lived next to Axl Rose. Supposedly, George Clooney held me as a baby. My family in the legal field. I grew up in an upper middle class, rich life. All right, but no, it didn't last. By the time I was 18, I was fucking trying to sell bad psychedelic drugs and work at fucking Target. I had to work at a fucking Target. That's how bad my life went. No, my life was deeply affected by the fucked up healthcare system. All right, the housing crisis, unaffordable, unusable college. I mean, I slept in my car from the age of 20 to 25. All right, don't get me started on the housing crisis. Okay, yeah, man, I had a broken family because of my psycho lawyer father. Technically, I'm a second generation immigrant. All right, I went to a very religious high school, and I rebelled against it. I mean, yeah, I started comedy when I was 18, all right, because my life felt like a fucking joke. I had no idea what to do. Everybody was always laughing at me. And, yeah, comedy just seemed fine, all right? And in 2019, I had been doing stand-up for, 5 years. And I had as much momentum as anybody in the business, okay? I had been on Kill Tony. I was getting respect at the Comedy Store, the clubs, and other places. Yeah, I saved $10,000 while sleeping in my 1982 El Camino my mom bought for me when I was 16 for $4,000, okay? And I spent it all making a surreal stand-up comedy special showcase. And, it was with me and all my comic friends. It was awesome, all right? And then 20 happens, and we all get hit with the pan-damn fuck. I got wrecked, okay? I quit my job working as a janitor for In-N-Out, all right? And I moved to Mexico, and I watched my grandfather die of old age. All right, my grandfather, who became who was a Mexican citizen and got his U.S. citizenship. All right, an incredible man, and I watched it fucking fade away. And then 2 years ago, I've been doing stand up 9 years. I got a DUI. My grandfather dies. My older sister dies. Fucking a week after they take a COVID vaccine shot, and literally. Then I was dating this girl who, I really liked, but if I'm entirely honest, was just trying to make someone feel bad and hopeless and disgusting. Women. And I had begun working for In-N-Out again as a janitor, as a manager, trying to make it. And, when that girl broke up with me, I guess, I fucking had it. All right. So I quit working for someone else and started my own business as a process server. Yeah, if you've ever seen Pineapple Express, that's what I do. Yeah, and it's crazy. I'm getting all kinds of stories. They're all steeped in legal issues. For Christ's sake, I'm doing the Lord's work. At 10:30 p.m. the other day, I served a restraining order to some maniac at the Santa Monica Promenade. All right, I'm working hard. I'm being an entrepreneur, all right? And then I decided to start this motherfucking podcast, okay? And me, I'm one of the guys, all right? I've seen the TV shows. I've listened to the programs. I have met and assessed pretty much, every fucking archetype and stereotype out there, okay? I grew up in San Bernardino, California in 2008, my first year of high school, highest murder per capita in the nation. I've lived all over California. I've seen the people, all right? And I know what it takes to run an incredibly successful business. 8 years working at In-N-Out, okay? I know what it means to be in a green room with comedy legends, all right? I've done the shows. I've been with the people. I've met the guys. I, personally, have taken tons of financial and artistic risks, and I've bombed the fuck out, okay? It's gone very bad for me, career-wise. All right, I've lived on the edge personally. I've lost really, important people to me. I've been bullied by strong people. I've been really mean to weak people. Look, I know about good and evil. All right, I've seen it. I've seen it in my life, however banal or quasi-spiritual. And if I really take an inventory, I do feel like I've accomplished enough in my life to die tomorrow, all right? But I got a lot left in tank, man. I'm about to turn the great sum of 31, all right? Fucking someone blow my neck out already. Yeah, I do this podcast from my studio apartment, all right? I spend about an hour rearranging everything and getting the lights set up so I can fucking do this for you people, all right? I am trying really hard to do stuff, okay? I have a tough, interesting backstory, and I'm still fucking working, all right? I have a real serious fucking opinion about how the world works, how it needs to work, for whatever idea of mutual cooperation we have. And I know in my heart, when I compare myself to others, I have something unique and important to share in terms of my perspective. Okay? Because, when I look at this whole fucked up world, when I look at the whole picture and I add up every oddity, supposition, prediction, and possible fact, okay, I look at this whole world and the idea that we are born and then put up to try and work and do things that constitute, whatever we consider a human life, I find it absolutely ridiculous. All right? And is that not unique? Okay, we have things to do. Things to, that we are expected to do to have a life, for whatever particular reason. And it just seems laughable, all right? Sometimes I look at it and I look at all the things we have to do to function, and I'm going, are we put up to this by some fucking oligarchical dictator, trying to create some monopolistic empire? Or are we pushed by some practically omnipotent, interdimensional, ancient alien space god who's using our bodies as power sources to use and run their identified phenomena? Am I doing this all because of my mom? I don't know. It just all seems unfathomable. Seems absurd. Real dumb. Sounds a little funny, right? It sounds like a joke to me. And I'm not sure I believe in any of the things people do in this world, all right? Sometimes I'm busting out of the seams most days. Okay, I have a strong emotional response to the idea that we are here on Earth, motivated by life and death, trying to accomplish things. I have a weird, indescribable feeling about that. And, life is a big deal. It's super serious. Okay, I accept that. I accept it as a very serious, big deal. But, when I look at my life and I look at everything, that I've been through and been working on, I don't know. I just, it makes me smile. Makes me genuinely smile. Life, it weighs heavy on a lot of people, and they're correct in their assessment, all right? But for me, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Kind of just don't give a fuck. I have a lot of reasons to give a fuck about what's going on, and I have clearly thought about them, okay? And I try hard to perform in whatever thing we got going on right now, but I will say for me, there is a nice little disconnect between what I do, what I want to do, and expecting a certain outcome from those. All right, I'm not sure I really care about anything. I mean, I have a life. It's interesting, but here I am. I'm a comedian, right? I mean, I should really give more of a fuck. But in my heart, I do believe that whatever it means to live your purpose, whatever my true natural talent is, I believe it's comedy, and it means a lot to me. All right, I'm here like fucking nearly fully realized. And, I look at the situation, what's going on with, my business, with the world at large. And, it seems to me, part of, what motivates me to do this podcast is, the only thing that seems, worth talking about is, what we're actually doing here in the economy, how we act within the economy. We're always concerning ourselves with money, opportunity. It really just seems like the only thing we're doing on fucking planet Earth sometimes is thinking about resources and how to allocate them. All right? Yeah, there are questions about how we categorize desirable objects, how we value the limited time we are here on Earth, how we work together with human beings occupying our same space, and how that has even been set up in the first place. Okay? And when I look at these questions, and I'm trying to find the value in my own perspective, I will say that maybe I don't always have the right answer, but perhaps I can offer an opinion or perspective that is so clearly not the right answer, that is so clearly wrong, that you can compare and contrast and perhaps, come up with the correct answer on your own. All right. I'm all about the value in comedic contrast. All right. We all can agree. Comedy, really popular right now. Really popular. And I'm just trying to niche it out. I mean, if anything, I'm just trying to create a product in this, genre style political comedy podcast. Right? I mean, there's these guys, these dumb cunt comic geniuses who created a format, a structure, and fuck it, it's popular. All right, it's fucking popular. And what would I be? What kind of force would I be in the economy if I didn't just, try and do something people like and want? I mean, that is really all we're doing out here, right? It's figuring out the fucking economy. A lot of work to do. And perhaps my perspective and my life story can give you an interesting perspective on it. I mean, yeah, there's lots of work to do in figuring out how this economy works, all right? Especially here in Los Estados Unidos, all right? So today, instead of talking about Jeffrey Epstein, instead of doing that, we're going to fool around, not like that. We're going to fool around and look at some stuff, some economical stuff. But first, just so I can get a little another baby bump, I'm gonna play a little clip from Famous Dave and Candace Winfrey, and they're talking about the free market. Here we are. This is what it's about. Rose-colored Classist talking about the fucking free market. Let's hit it. Play the clip.
I should probably be focused on that one. It has been, there's been something that, I've been thinking a lot about this because obviously there's been this big cancellation attempt primarily against you and Tucker. Although by proxy, I guess I've been caught up in it a bit. Obviously, both you and Tucker, Tucker was fired from Fox News. You were fired from the Daily Wire. Both went on to be much bigger after getting canned. And yet now there's this attempt again to cancel you. And we're all kind of wondering, from what? What would you even cancel them from? And so anyway, as Mark Levin is openly calling for you and Tucker's cancellation, and Dinesh D'Souza, people like this are openly calling, it is just funny because you're objectively right now, you and Tucker are the two biggest conservative political commentators. This is just undeniable. And so their plan right now is we want to cancel number one and number two. This is just how do you even get away with doing that when the people have already told you they're on their side, not yours? Right. What's it been like for you to just kind of watch this?
Well, yesterday was a fantastic day. I mean, to get the email from Podscribe, number one podcast in the world. And of course, I am humbled by it truly because the audience is the reason. This truly was a free market response. And to go back and find the people who worked day in and day out to ruin my life. It wasn't like they just wanted me gone from the Daily Wire, which they got and they celebrated and effectively danced on my grave. It wasn't, they then were trying to get my speaking events canceled. They were the ones that put pressure on Charlie not to let me speak. And I said to him, dude, I got enough going on. I don't want you to also just by proxy catch a flame because they want to cancel me. They got me banned from Australia. I had to cancel a tour, right? Simply because I didn't agree with Israel. That you would think that I harmed somebody by having a different opinion. And so I think also something that's important to remember, Dave, is these people do not believe in the free markets. That's the number one thing to remember. They want people to be artificially pushed out of the free markets so that they can say they're number one. They love a world where, what happened back, what was it in 2020 when people were getting knocked off of platforms left and right. Maybe it was earlier than that, actually. It was before Trump was president. They love that world where you're artificially kicking out the gateway pundit. You're not allowed to be on Facebook anymore. You're artificially kicking out Alex Jones. You're not allowed to have a platform. And then they go, we're number one. We are the number one most listened to conservative news podcaster. It's no, you're not. There's no market here. And that's what they want right now. They want their markets to be restricted so that they can be number one again.
All right, listen to these two fucking Siamese cat-looking motherfuckers. What are they purring about? Yeah, today this is the question that I want to answer, so I can plow into the future from a decent position. Is what kind of economic system are we actually here in America? What do we actually have? What kind of market? Yeah, you look at these two. What are they? They're two free speech operators. That's how you would talk about them. But in this case, with their use of free speech, what is the First Amendment actually achieving here in America? What is the point of it? What's the point of me using it? The point is to provide an economic opportunity, right? These guys and girl, guy and girl, queen bitch, they're making money off of their freedom of speech. Okay, I don't, but they do. And we have several freedoms here in America. I mean, people talk about having them. Some say we have less and less every day. But what is the point of the freedoms we have in America? What is the point of that lofty talk about what we do here in America? The point is for us to have as many options for financial success as possible. All right, this is what the rights are for, by the way. Okay, and you can go on about how the rights are enshrined in the Constitution because that's what justice is and righteousness, and you have the right not to be jailed. Yeah, due process. I'm a process server. All right, I care deeply about due process. But what is the point of not being in jail? What is the point? It's so you can develop economically. That's what the rights are supposed to be guaranteeing. All right, our rights in America, what purpose do they serve? It's to make fucking money. Who's with me? Get on it. Get on the podcast. We're going to be looking at the book, The Road to Serfdom today. It's a little libertarian book in opposition to the idea of central planning, right? And this is, if we're trying to contextualize what Davey Boy and Candace Baby are pointing out here, is that whatever is going on in America, it's not the free market. It's some sort of mutated, bastardized version of it. And I would like to brand it. I'd like to try and name it. So here it is. This is what we got going on in America. It's something I would like to call the free to agree market. All right. Yes, I am allowed to start my own business. Okay. I am allowed to come up with new ideas and innovate, but only as long as I don't fuck up someone else's shit. Okay. What kind of thing do we have going on in America? Is it a competitive economy? Sometimes it feels like it's the exact opposite, all right? If you actually try and, fucking do something interesting, try and achieve something interesting, you have, particular interests in this country that'll try and slap you down with regulations. Big companies will collude to ruin you. They'll even ban you from borrowing capital. People talk, like we're here in America, that we're a capitalist system. But here in America, you could lose the ability to borrow capital. Sounds a bit odd, right? Yeah, I mean, my lefty brothers and sisters, they'll talk about late-stage capitalism, right? America's in late-stage capitalism. Well, here's a reality check, all right? I'm going to give you a reality check, and I'm going to fucking sign my name in a flourish, all right? Mark the Boxer mobile deposit. This is it. This is what you got to realize. We have not had capitalism in America since like World War II. All right? We kind of haven't had capitalism since like the New Deal. Perhaps even World War I. Maybe since 1914 when the central bank was invented. Okay? What's going on here in the United States is we have rampant monopolies that collude with the government. Whose goal is to stifle competition and prevent new people from entering the market. Okay? And maybe it's been like that way for hundreds of years. All right? I mean, here in America, you can go back to Teddy Roosevelt, go back to Andrew Jackson and whatever fights they had. We had this idea that we're battling with here in America is that we have people who, call themselves capitalists, espouse libertarianism, but in reality, they act in a totalitarian, communistic fashion. Okay? And they push people out of the market for whim. Yeah, the only capitalist can be me. You, on the other hand, don't get to do shit unless I give you the go-ahead. All right? Look at every business here in America. I mean, it goes from the internet and telecommunications to oil to financial services. BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they own everything, and unless you buy from them, you can't buy from nobody. I mean, what? Do we got to talk about the Teapot Dome scandal? Teapot Dome scandal? That time JP Morgan bailed out the American government? We got to bring up Rockefeller, who bought every politician fucking whole cloth? All right, free market capitalism is understood that we have in America. It died a slow death. All right, it died a slow death through hundreds of years. All right, every paid off politician, every bought out competitor. I mean, it seems that what's happened here is they've slowly created a world under the ideological guise of capitalism. It seems to what have happened. They go under the guise of capitalism, but really what it is like a plutocratic fascism. Communism for the oligarchs. All right, trail down every story of every billionaire here in America, and it's like the whole of their wealth has been accomplished through taxpayer fraud, taxpayer funded fucking fraud. All right, yeah, this history, of these rich, powerful people. I mean, most of the time, I really believe this. It isn't about some kind of technological luck, the fortune of being born in a certain time and place so you get to make the fucking railroads or whatever. And it's certainly not about providing goods at a competitive price. No, they leverage people. They've bullied people out of the competitive game. It goes on and on, all right? These guys, these rich people who have run the country forever, it's not like they won on a chessboard of market forces, okay? They bought people off, got people to throw the game. They fucking tilted the table over and started beating our ass. Yeah, here's the deal. Here's what it is, okay? Here's what I'm really saying. Maybe what all these alternative podcasters are saying that I don't think ever gets perfectly crystallized. But there is a paradigm that has been set up by institutional and moneyed power by the governments who won the Second World War. Okay, and it works in a certain way to keep them on top. It's the whole thing. It's the whole thing. And just to quote a whistleblower that I respect a lot, his name is Matthew Brown. He was a whistleblower about aliens, but here it is. All right, we have freedom of speech here in America, but what we do not have is a freedom of inquiry. There are lines of questions that we are not allowed to go down. Questions about how the currency was set up, questions about the military power, the questions about what fairness there actually is. And these guys, I'm going to say, I'm not here, no one's here to try and come out and say what is right or wrong about these lines of questions. But the fact that it seems that there's, it's a big fucking psyop to try and confuse us about what system we're actually in. All right, yeah, we are ruled by people who have put us in a rhetorical box. Like Candace and Davey says, all right, a prison where we're not allowed to talk about certain things. All right, inside the box you have this limited conversation. All right, but the moment and minute someone steps out of it, obviously there's a coordinated attack. You get bylines like some fucking Sinclair Broadcasting Network compilation. All right, people spit out the same shit. Whatever, even particular authentic criticism, genuine right-minded criticism these guys have. The fact that there's a chorus of it, it's troubling. This coordination is not the free market. And, it seems to me that every time, an American tries to, pop out of the prison, they're like a fucking jack-in-the-box and they get a hammer. They get hammered. And they get slapped in the box looking like some kind of fucking clown, just springing around. All right, we're made to look ridiculous if we ask the question about what we're actually fucking doing here. All right? And then this goes from, Noam Chomsky, Norm McDonald Chomsky. That's a good character. We should run with him. No, it goes from the idea of manufactured consent, all right, to the stories like how Donnie T would have the National Enquirer buy a story for him. All right, propaganda, PR. Everyone keeps mentioning the name Edward Bernays to me. Okay. And, when we look at what happens to all our people that we look to for the truth, or literally just a line of questioning that it seems we're not allowed to go down, they get called crazy. I'm called crazy. I feel crazy. All right. And what are we supposed to be mad at these guys who've been propagandized not to flip their shit about whatever, content they have when they're rejecting the status quo? I mean, yeah. What are we all doing in here in America? What are we all doing here? What are we actually functioning as? And that's the big question. That's the big question. Is there a battle? What are we all agreeing to? And it feels like if people have a position who are in charge, they're not actually staking any ground. I mean, here's the real story. And, you've heard this a bunch, but yeah, the central bankers fund war. They profit off of both sides, and they say and do anything to get us to do it. Yeah, they call someone a Nazi. They call someone a communist. They call me a Nazi communist. Whatever. It's about building identities for human beings to belong to, and then taking those identities and then use them as ping pong balls and smack them back and forth right over the green, baby. And it's done by people who have created the financial structure. So what's really going on. And, they paddle our ass every time we bounce off the table. I mean, if anything that I'm trying to do here is, it feels like we're all playing a game and we don't know the rules. We have all these players, but we don't even know the game has started. All right, there's a lot of money on the table here in America, and, are we going to play poker or not? What are we doing? What do we need to do? Right? So this podcast, I'm going to go over a book. The rest of this podcast is going to be over a book. Yeah, I'm going to get an audio book on this podcast. It's the peak of content. It's the peak of content. Literally, I'm ripping off of Candace's book club. Someone infiltrate me, please. And yeah, man, and I played them up top, but these Dave Smith libertarians, they really got me thinking like them about the economy, right? Because I look at this weird situation we have set up in America, this weird fucking hunchback, fucking diseased, poisoned, looks like, it got dumped in nuclear fucking waste. It's probably what happened to the economy. You dumped nuclear waste on it, and it just mutated into this, again, like bastardized free market capitalist system that basically and essentially is a centrally planned economy. It's a nightmare. Centrally planned economy. This book I'm going to play is going to say the words centrally planned economy a lot.
It is significant that one of the commonest objections to competition is that it is blind. It is not irrelevant to recall that to the ancients, blindness was an attribute of their deity of justice. Although competition and justice may have little else in common, it is as much a commendation of competition as of justice that it is no respecter of persons. That it is impossible to foretell who will be the lucky ones or whom disaster will strike, that rewards and penalties are not shared out according to somebody's views about the merits or demerits of different people, but depend on their capacity and their luck, is as important as that, in framing legal rules, we should not be able to predict which particular person will gain and which will lose by their application. And this is none the less true because in competition, chance and good luck are often as important as skill and foresight in determining the fate of different people. The choice open to us is not between a system in which everybody will get what he deserves according to some absolute and universal standard of right, and one where the individual shares are determined partly by accident or goodwill or ill chance, but between a system where it is the will of a few persons that decides who is to get what, and one where it depends at least partly on the ability and enterprise of the people concerned, and partly on unforeseeable circumstances.
There you go. What an orator, the guy who read this audiobook. I put him on 1.2 speed to try and, give you guys a break here. But this is important shit. I want to talk about it. Maybe it's not the most interesting in the whole world. But it's important to set this up. Right. So what are we supposed to be doing here in America? What are we supposed to be doing? It's the system of competition where there is luck, there is chance, there is skill and opportunity. And it's important to understand that that's one option, and the only other option is instead of those four things, it's just like four guys, four people figuring it all out, making those decisions. And this is the question, this is the call we are trying to make here in America, why supposedly we established the country in the fucking first place. This is the call we are trying to make, okay, between the forces of luck and chance and the force of some guy named Chance who may not give a fuck, okay? And yeah, it's obvious. When you look around nowadays here in America, it seems like every major problem is someone's fault. Some specific someone's fault. Some guy's fault for fucking up society, and instead of blaming the interdimensional force of fortune, right, people want to put some guy in there and have him take the fall. And the important thing to understand is that when you do things like that, not only does he take all the blame when something goes bad, he also gets all the praise and good things when it works out. Okay? And it's not about what you did or what you didn't do. It's the idea that someone is responsible other than you for what you did and didn't do. Okay? And, it can work out, it cannot work out. Those are always the options. And personally, I would rather blame some fucking corporal idea of luck rather than, some guy who, prevented my success. We're supposed to be operating within the game of chance and competition. And we have our part in it, but it's better, 50% me than 100% some other guy. Okay? Now, let's play more of the road and try and get a whole picture of this idea, right?
There is indeed a strong case for reducing this inequality of opportunity as far as congenital differences permit, and as it is possible to do so without destroying the impersonal character of the process by which everybody has to take his chance, and no person's view about what is right and desirable overrules that of others. The fact that the opportunities open to the poor in a competitive society are much more restricted than those open to the rich does not make it less true that in such a society the poor are much more free than a person commanding much greater material comfort in a different type of society. Although under competition the probability that a man who starts poor will reach great wealth is much smaller than is true of the man who has inherited property, it is not only possible for the former, but the competitive system is the only one where it depends solely on him, and not on the favors of the mighty, and where nobody can prevent a man from attempting to achieve this result. It is only because we have forgotten what unfreedom means that we often overlook the patent fact that in every real sense a badly paid unskilled worker in this country has more freedom to shape his life than many a small entrepreneur in Germany, or a much better paid engineer or manager in Russia. Whether it is a question of changing his job or the place where he lives, of professing certain views, or of spending his leisure in a particular manner, although sometimes the price he may have to pay for following his inclinations may be high, and to many appear too high, there are no absolute impediments, no dangers to bodily security and freedom that confine him by brute force to the task and the environment to which a superior has assigned him.
Right. Now, why pick the system of competition versus the centrally planned? And again, we say centrally planned, and what that means at the end of the day is that a group of people are making all the decisions for the economy. A specific small group. Now, again, when you look at the system of competition, I think, it's unfair. And the reason it's unfair is because you're giving in to the idea of luck. Right? And this is probably the biggest thing that prevents everybody from loving it and liking it, and perhaps why everyone's, slid in to the fucking fascism and communism. And this guy mentions Germany and Russia. I do want to mention again that this guy wrote this book in 1944. And so, imagine the lens he has looking at this, particular issue of economies. Now, right. So, the big thing that makes everyone hate capitalism, right, is the idea that, some fucking rich kid gets a better shot than perhaps I do. All right. And yeah, the book admits there is an idea of unfairness out there. Okay. There is an idea that, things are a little unfair sometimes. That's something we have to accept, because what is the alternative, right? But the mention of material wealth, I go on and about money, but there is stuff out there that is nice, and we all want them. But there is this idea of what they call a golden bird cage. Has anyone ever heard of that? Yeah, I know a lot about bird cages. I belong in one. At least my head does. But the golden bird cage, what is it? It's like the idea that, your prison might be nice, but you're still in prison. Shout out Ghislaine Maxwell. And just look at the situation, right? And look how a lot of other cultures are. You look at people like, the British royalty. Yes, their material lives are absolutely incredible. But there is something to say about how restrictive their lifestyle actually can be. There has been a study or two about how at some point, money doesn't make you happier. Okay, yeah, and if you had a certain lifestyle, your finances and wealth wouldn't change how happy you are. I hate to say it, but this idea that we're all free to get fucked, it's important. Okay, protecting ourselves and putting ourselves in this little cocoon where no one can hurt us and everything is controlled and nothing bad can happen per chance. It's not fucking that awesome, all right? It's something, being a fuck up is a wonderful thing for a lot of people. It's something I'm taking advantage of right now. I feel good most days for how bad I am fucking my life up. And, I know you don't want me to be a fuck up. I don't want to be a fuck up. But the fact that I'm happy has a value. The fact that I'm free to do and not to do, right? The point to keep my own mental health up is to convince me personally not to be a fuck up, right? Someone forces me not to be a fuck up. It doesn't make me less of one. I'm just a fuck up who's now doing something, right? And, would you really want a system where some fuck up gets material wealth, earns it? Supposedly that's the issue with the rich kid, but all right, more of the book. I'm going to play this next clip, talk more about this, the idea of the wealthy and powerful being successful.
And who will deny that a world in which the wealthy or powerful is still a better world than one in which the already powerful can acquire wealth? It is pathetic, yet at the same time encouraging to find as prominent an old communist as Max Eastman rediscovering this truth.
It seems obvious to me now, though I have been slow, I must say, in coming to the conclusion, that the institution of private property is one of the main things that have given man that limited amount of free and equalness that Marx hoped to render infinite by abolishing this institution. Strangely enough, Marx was the first to see this. He is the one who informed us, looking backwards, that the evolution of private capitalism with its free market had been a precondition for the evolution of all our democratic freedoms. It never occurred to him, looking forward, that if this was so, these other freedoms might disappear with the abolition of the free market.
So again, what is the issue with the game of luck and chance and competition? It's where the rich have a leg up, right? But what does this guy say in this line? And it's maybe one of my favorite lines I've heard in this book, and I've only heard it because I dare not read a word. It's it's the line, it's about a world where there are wealthy and powerful versus a world where the powerful can be wealthy. That's not the line exactly, but it's the idea that power is this thing that exists no matter what, right? Now let me lay something out. I'm going to try my best. It's convoluted, and if that's not to be expected, right? So when you think about how we develop the economy, how we came up with all this stuff, obviously, it's not like we knew all these things outright. All right, there's been a continuum of us slowly learning. Unless I start talking about like lost civilizations or something, it seems that we are finding things out incrementally. Things like human life is valuable. All right, that it doesn't all occur to us at once. It doesn't exactly happen overnight that we figure out that people are actually worth something. All right, so talking about the economy and how we set it up and what it means, like how did it start? How did it start when this incremental path we took? This is how I think it went down. All right, I think we figured out that humans are valuable, that things have value, is by, comparing and contrasting our feelings to objects, right? To resources, to work, right? Things had value, right? Food, fire, clothing. You put on a fur coat, you feel better. The fur coat is obviously valuable. But, to explain that logically, you have to assign yourself value, right? Things matter because they matter to me. But I'll be honest, if you're some kind of fucking caveman, I don't think it's that easy to figure out. Okay, we're talking about a fundamental self-awareness, a quality that's known to be scarce. All right, self-awareness about what we're doing, right? Like, so if we're not self-aware, if we're some dummy dum-dums, and objects are the only things that have value, well, it would make sense that whoever has the most objects is the most valuable. Whoever is the most powerful, whoever is the most wealthy, they are the most valuable. Right? But then you ask yourself a question as a person who doesn't have the objects is, what makes someone better if they have more stuff than me? Right? Nothing. If I had that stuff, if I had those objects, I could also be very, very valuable. If he could have those objects, then I could have those objects. And then my blood start boiling. I start getting real mad. Yeah, conflict is a brewing. Human rights, the value of human life, it's about to be in trouble. Now, as per the book, as per that little weird quote this guy said, this is where private property comes in. Right? Now, if you have laws and rules about dealing with the objects that provide value, right? Rules that, create a structure where we are fairly competing for these objects that hopefully has an agreement that at the end of the day, someone does own the thing. When someone actually owns the stuff after a competitive process, right? When you have that moment, you get to think to yourself, why do objects have value to me? What am I in relation to the objects? Introspection begins, right? This is the idea that private property, developed human rights. It makes a lot of sense when, you lay it out like how I did, right? Right? No, this is what I'm saying. The point of civilization, the point of the economy, the point of language, information, and maybe even comedy is to avoid conflict, rampant, mad, violent conflict. Yes, yeah, the powerful are powerful. It took us a long time to figure out why. They had the stuff. We didn't know what difference it was between me and them and how come they had the stuff. All right, the powerful existed. And they're probably going to keep doing that. They're probably all going to keep existing. All right. But the point is to avoid conflict with them if you so choose. And a great place to do that is your personal private property. I mean, they get to have stuff. I should at least have a little bit of stuff too. Right? And it's because objects have value. And why do objects have value? Because I have value and they matter to me. And this is the development of human rights. Competition did it. This book convinced me wholeheartedly. Let's play the last segment of this book. I'm hoping I'm making sense. It may not be the most interesting stuff in the world, but I'm trying to lay something out, my own little paradigm, so I can move forward. Okay? So I can look at all these Jeffrey Epstein documents in the right light. Yeah, it's real warm light. Okay, last clip. Oh, we're heading towards the end.
The transferring all property and the means of production to the state, they put the state in a position whereby its action must in effect decide all other incomes. The power thus given to the state, and the demand that the state should use it to plan, means nothing else than that it should use it in full awareness of all these effects. To believe that the power which is thus conferred on the state is merely transferred to it from others is erroneous. It is a power which is newly created and which in a competitive society nobody possesses. So long as property is divided among many owners, none of them acting independently has exclusive power to determine the income and position of particular people. Nobody is tied to any one property owner except by the fact that he may offer better terms than anybody else. What our generation has forgotten is that the system of private property is the most important guarantee of freedom, not only for those who own property, but scarcely less for those who do not. It is only because the control of the means of production is divided among many people acting independently that nobody has complete power over us, that we as individuals can decide what to do with ourselves. If all the means of production were vested in a single hand, whether it be nominally that of society as a whole or that of a dictator, whoever exercises this control has complete power over us. Who can seriously doubt that a member of a small racial or religious minority will be freer with no property, so long as fellow members of his community have property, and are therefore able to employ him, than he would be if private property were abolished and he became owner of a nominal share in the communal property? Or that the power which a multiple millionaire, who may be my neighbor and perhaps my employer, has over me is very much less than that which the smallest functionaire possesses who wields the coercive power of the state, and on whose discretion it depends whether and how I am allowed to live or to work.
3, 2, 1. All right, so last little clip of the book I'm going to show. Now, what is the whole picture I'm trying to paint? First, again, I got to say, because it's, like, we're confused here in America. These ideas are confusing because we have what this guy is laying out makes a lot of sense, which we will talk about. But then there's the reality of what's going on in America, and it's like, yes, supposedly in America we have private property, right? But what's happening, right? The private property is only accessible to a small group of people. And if you think about that in a different way, what is that? That's a group, a small group, or one big one owning the property, de facto. And a lot of people want to, look at that and say we need to get rid of private property, right? This is a version of central planning that's pretty popular. Pretty popular central planning. And maybe I'm not doing a good enough job of, making it clear what the other side is. Central planning has a lot of definitions, a lot of the way it operates. I mean, we have a central planning here in America, and it's not defined correctly, which is my main argument. And so I play this, and I go, well, what keeps us away from it? And he's saying private property. The argument that private property is what, secures your individual rights, it is hard to just agree with. I will say that. It isn't, evident, as per that last thing I said. And of course, when in America, when you invoke the term private property, I assume some people are going to start thinking about slavery. I mean, what's a better example of private property, right? Yeah, no. What's the deal? What's the deal with slavery? Why is it wrong? I'm kidding. Segment, cut me out. Okay, why? No, I'm not trying to say that. I mean, slavery is wrong. All right, but why is it wrong? Why? Cut that out, please. Yeah, why is it wrong? It's because they can't own property themselves. I mean, this guy in the book, he admits it. I mean, I don't know if he's that hard to follow. I have the timestamps there for you if you want to fill in the middle pieces. But the idea, yes, some people are going to have some level of power over us. Got to admit that. He admits it. Yes, people have power over us. But the important part is that it's not complete. Complete power is wrong. A little bit of power, I mean, yeah, as per the object argument, it seems to be the natural order of things. Everybody has a little power over everyone, all right, when you consider violence. But let's not consider it much. Okay, yes, the only way for a person not to have some power over you is for someone to have complete power over them. And what if you're them? What if you're they? Who is they? I'll never know. But I'm getting sold on this idea. I'm getting sold on it. That if we, value the individual, if a person values themselves, how that person is supposed to do it, and the only way for them to do it socially is through the idea of private property. I mean, come on. Doesn't everybody want a little private property? Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing here? I mean, come on. Are we really sold on the idea that, someone else or society should, have a say in how valuable I actually am? I mean, yeah, there's the fact of how valuable I am, whatever truth it is. But like how this guy lays it out, if everyone is comparing their own personal value to someone else's personal value, rather than, some rule bureaucratically agreed upon of what's valuable and what's not, you can see how the logic, would take you to, you can only be valuable within a particular range. Whereas if you do it with everybody, the range of how valuable you could be is as large as the whole of how every individual competitive person would consider you. I mean, yeah, come on. The argument about that little ethnic minority thing he said, it's an interesting one, right? I mean, yeah, this book was written in 1944. All right, this guy is really thinking and living these specific problems. And yeah, I mentioned World War II up top. I mean, that era has defined, how we think about everything. Yeah, I mean, what, National Socialists, communists. This guy saw, real militarism appear in the West, the militarism that is essentially planned economy. And again, I think, this idea, it's a tough one, right? But the more groups there are, the more options a person can have, to exist in any of them, right? Versus these systems that, I just mentioned where there's only one group or two groups, shout out America, it limits about where you could find yourself, right? But if we're competitive, if we're all individuals, if we start grouping people, it starts at two, and it's, becomes the infinite set or whatever. You can group and group and group and group, and like how he says, it becomes a type of protection versus the powerful. And, we can't change the powerful. Someone's always going to be powerful. And yeah, again, when you think about particular systems where there's only one or two fucking groups, it's not a free market, right? You have to, at some level, agree with either group. And if you don't play along, you don't get to play at all. And, maybe hopefully, we'll do better, at least politically here in America. But the options, the possibility to, get out of a group, get into a new one, I'm all about it. I think private property is, what secures that. I mean, think about the real examples of what's going on in America, all right? Some people didn't fit in somewhere, and, they went out on their own. All right. And what gives you the ability to get away from it all, get away from everybody? It's the ability to have something of your own. All right. Even if you don't have anything right now. All right. I mean, come on. What if a government or a person owned everything? It's, by definition, if you don't align, then you can't be there. But if everything was owned by a bunch of governments or a bunch of people, at least there's a chance you could align with one of them. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, okay, like, everything is already owned. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, there's the idea of, like, the frontier and how things are completely new and you're the first one to get there, but that's romantic, okay? I mean, truthfully, in America, it wasn't even like that in the first place. Something Native Americans. All right, everything is already owned. Yeah, this is the big issue, right? Because no one can afford, to buy private property. Certain properties, can only trade hands with a select group of people. And I'm convinced it's not capitalism, right? It's not capitalism or private property that made that shit happen. And yeah, they hid under the ideology, but it's not really what happened. I mean, yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough here in America to remember or think about a time where it was completely meritocratic. Okay, yeah, when you look at laws about voting, when you look at all the voting laws, or who could even own property in the first place? Yeah, did we ever have true competition? I mean, if anything, if we had true competition at some point, the first time anybody won, they rigged it so they could win forever. But I guess maybe, this is the struggle that the founding fathers had for us, right? For everyone to have the chance to own property. All right. Because, have we not moved in this direction? more and more people having rights. And what do rights secure? I said that in the beginning. They exist so we can compete inside of a marketplace. I mean, this is that liberal shit. This is what I'm talking about. That liberal shit. More and more people having rights. Everyone having the chance to succeed in the market, to not be harassed or grouped up in a particular way. Make any group you want. I mean, this is like, liberal libertarianism. They sound the same for a reason, right? Yeah, this is competition by definition is a struggle that happens forever, right? We have to be able to compete with the powerful. That's the whole game. Because the powerful have had everything forever. So what system can be in place for us to compete fairly? Right? I mean, look, if we're all talking about Marxism and centrally planned whatever, if you think, we can destroy the powerful, I don't think that seems to work, right? I mean, destroying the rich and powerful seems hard, actually. Seems pretty hard by the words that described them. So for us, when you look at all the possible systems and how we're going to, operate in the future, it's about competition. It's about competing and making sure we're always able to compete. It's not about violence. It's not about destruction. Okay, if I want anything, if rose-colored classist is about anything, it's about allowing us to compete. Allowing people to compete. All right, I'm an independent process server. All right, I got a business. I have a little comedy business. If I ever get back into it, I'm sure I could, manage a restaurant or at least clean the fuck out of it. I'll be some kind of venue guy in the future. And I want the chance to compete. All right, I accept people are powerful. I accept that they have child sex rings and they blow each other. I accept that. It's fine. I'm here to compete with it. I'm here to try and be better. I'm not trying to stop you. All right, because you're just like me. All right, every human being has some value within a range. Every human being has as much value as every individual decides. Does that sound fair? Okay. All right. That was the podcast. I did it. I hope I got to something. I was supposed to lay out a personal vision. All right, that's what I was trying to do. And look, I'll be serious. Like if the political discussion needs anything right now, it needs to be talking about private property. All right, we all need to be able to own our own stuff by ourselves. Okay, it's not about being by yourself. I accept, there's people out there who have had a lot of stuff for a long time. All right. But I just, I don't want to be beholden to people. I don't want to have to listen to some authority. And I don't think they would want to do that either. All right. Just let us compete. Let us group up as many times as we like. Don't try to put us in some bucket. There's obviously a lot more to talk about. Not painting a complete picture here. Should talk more about money, right? It's always about money. Yeah. If you want to know about money, listen to Famous Dave and whatever he does. We need to unwind fiat currency for private property to work. Yeah, I wish there was a specific video that I could link to whenever I start thinking about that. Yeah, maybe that's what I should look into. More projects for the podcast. I barely can do this. Right on. That was it. Holy shit. Like it. Subscribe it. Fucking suck my clit in the moonlight. I don't know what to tell you. The minute I hire somebody, this podcast is going to get a lot better. All right. I need somebody with me. Please email rosecoloredclasses@gmail.com. Help me out. Give you my Cash App. I'll send you my Cash App via email. I'm going to get some guy, some lady, some small person, and they're going to be of age. I'm thinking a lot about Jeffrey Epstein, and they're going to be a normal human being with a lot of value, and they're going to comment on this YouTube post video thing. They're going to comment on Instagram. I obviously don't have the mentality to do it. I'm barely working with it. My fragile ego put me out on the internet. I'm barely even here. They're going to have so many hot reels. And you get the hot reels out. Please, I need to fucking hire somebody. Email rosecoloredclasses@gmail.com. Become part of the project. Make it good. I'll sign off a portion to the podcast. I'll sign it off. Here, have it. 25% of all future revenue in perpetuity. I'll make that deal now. Private property, baby. Okay, that was it. Thank you so much. Bye. 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 I hope I edited this right. I mean, dude. I was really trying to get into my personal thoughts and feelings, and I started and stopped a few times. It was tough. Hope I lit your fire a little bit. Do your own research. Figure out, hear what I was talking about. Go, that's interesting, but he's an idiot. Let me listen to someone who's actually on top of their shit, huh? Okay. Now I'm done. Now. Right now.